We are hot. Welcome to Sacred Time. I'm Dennis Kaminsky. Here with me today, my co-host, the BIGBLERD, Big Blurred. How you been?
Been good, man. How you been doing?
I'm good. Just to clarify for the people listening at home who don't know what that means, blurred is it's like a combination. It's like a speak talk word from 1984 where they're combining words together. It's one of those.
Yeah.
But it means black nerd. For the people at home who don't understand what identifies you as a black nerd, why do you identify as a black nerd? I know it's a weird way to word that question, but where do you get the name from? That's kind of what I'm asking.
It's. I think if you talk to certain people, like the historians of where that came from, like at one point, I think it was specifically if you were into like a certain form of media, like let's say like you were a big quote unquote comic book nerd who was black. Oh well, you're a blur kind of thing. But
Okay, gotcha.
it's expanded to a lot of other things. I mean, it's literally what it is. It's if you're black and you're a nerd, whether that's you're a
Gotcha.
nerd about science or comic books or anime or cosplay. Like there's it's a very multifaceted thing to where it's just a passion for those type of like I said, those genres, those media, and for me especially, it's mostly with the fact that for the longest, big fan of superhero movies. Um, I watch anime every day, and
So you were specific to that first one real quick. It's not quite comic books, it's just superhero media, correct?
well, it is that I'm just saying for myself, and
Okay, gotcha.
for myself, like comic books, I've definitely read them, but I've also haven't invested a lot of time in reading throughout them because I'm a superhero movie fan. There's like only so much that I care to dive into comic book wise because I'm also aware they're not going to always stay true to whatever happens in the comic books. And I've seen the people who've had to deal with like, oh, they did this amazing arc in the comic book, and
So you
then
don't want to
see
get
it
too
halfway
invested.
done.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
I understand.
I get it. I totally get it. I'm trying to think of a good example where I kind of experienced that myself. Well, a perfect example. I'm also a big gamer. One of my all-time favorite series is the Persona series, and with Persona 5, that game out of the whole series, not to go deep, but if you've played the series, you know that game was just so style there's a word stylistically or whatever, just visually on a whole nother level to the previous games. And it's just they redid the format of some of the most minute things, like even just accessing the menu that was always in your face, was always stylish, and it was so just cool. It was a really cool ass game. So they come out with an anime, and I'm thinking to myself, like, well, I've always even looked at this game like an
No,
anime.
I
That's
like
just how the
Persona.
artwork.
I
I
like
love
anime.
Persona. It's going to be
This is
fucking
built for
great,
me.
and
Yeah.
the anime does not do it justice at all. Like the game, like I said, something as simple as just hitting the menu button. You have the character swinging in off screen, and if I remember right, on the base game, it was like an actual gunshot, and it would like crack the screen, and then that's where the menu comes up. I might be mistaken on where exactly that is, or whatever, but something like that. Visually, I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna get this in the anime too, hopefully, because it only is right.
Hmm.
It's complete. I won't say it's complete trash. I'm not gonna go to
Yeah.
that extreme,
Okay.
but it doesn't do it justice.
So the
So in a
knowledge that you had going in ended up hurting your viewing experience. So you have the same concern when it comes to comic books and superhero films. You're worried that if you understand the origin of the story too much, you're going to be like, "Hey, whoa, this is bullshit." That's true, man. I see that a lot
yeah.
with comic book fans. I see that with any fan of any media. To be completely honest, any book that I've ever read before I've seen a movie, I've always had at least a little bit of that feeling with, which doesn't happen very often because I've read probably less than 20 books. But I've seen a lot more than 20 movies, and not all 20 of those books have a movie. But there was a specific example. I think it's called Cirque du Freak, possibly. I don't remember. I think it's a vampire book series, though. but I ended up getting caught reading one or two of them in high school because I just had to read in like my English class or whatever. So I started one, and then when I got done, I jumped into the next one, and I was all right. You know what I mean? I wasn't like a diehard fan or anything like that, but because I read it when I saw that they were making a movie off of it, I had a little bit more of an interest.
Right.
And then when I watched the movie, I was like, oh yeah, no, this the book wasn't even that great, and to be completely honest, this movie doesn't even come close to doing the book any justice, so it doesn't really work as a film either. But no disrespect to John C. Reilly. I ain't trying to knock on John C. Reilly. I like John C. Reilly. He was cool in that movie. He just was probably miscast. But
Hey,
yeah,
it happens
it
to the best
like
of them
that a little bit.
sometimes.
Do you think that's
Yeah,
gonna happen?
and-
This is my sneaky segue, if you don't mind. Do you think it's gonna be like that with the HBO Last of Us series? Do you think that show can live up to the expectation that people have based off of how well executed the story was in the game?
No, and well, okay. My understanding, and if this is true, because I haven't looked into it too much, because I haven't really. Well, I don't have interest in the live show, so I never looked into it. But if I heard correctly, it's not going to be like a shot to shot like remake of the game or anything like that. I don't even think it's going to be evolving the main characters of the game. I think it's just
I
going to
believe
be
no.
like
Pedro Pascal got cast as Joel.
Oh, never mind that.
I'm pretty sure
never
that
mind.
so they
It's
are
not
taking
going
the
to work.
characters. Yeah.
Even though I like him, I think he's a cool guy too. He was cool in Mandalorian, but the issue is that type of thing just never works because there's this idea constantly of what's the right way to do it, which is the way you've seen it done in a whole nother form of media, and you expect that someone who didn't work on that originally, who's going to put their own visual ideas out there as far as what they want to interpret to their audience, to live up to that, it's just not going to work because they could do an amazing job, but if it's not similar or if it's not hitting certain marks that people experience through the game, there's going to be that disappointment. And nowadays there's a lot less of that understanding that the two are different. So just to kind of go back a little bit to what we were just saying about like reading a comic book and watching a superhero movie, I'm definitely not knocking it. Like I will say watching Guardians of the Galaxy made me want to read the book or read the comic books. But at the same time, I guess for me it was more like I started with the movies first and foremost. All the other comic book stuff that I knew before like Iron Man came out was mostly DC, oddly enough. My uncles liked Marvel and DC, but I learned a lot more about DC than I did about Marvel. But it was also the stuff I picked up from like the animated shows growing up, Justice League, X-Men, and so I was really kind of leaning more into the movies themselves to tell a story than I was looking into the comic books. And so when the times where I did go to the comic books and try to like look into something or see something and then go back and watch the movies, for me it was like, oh, well, I'm not having a lot of fun because in some aspects it's like there's details I see people are making of, whoa, they should have done it this way. And it's all because they seen it in the comic book. And the first time I seen it, I thought it was just still cool anyway. So it almost felt like it was like, oh, well, am I wrong because I had, didn't like it or didn't think it should have been like the comic book? And I'm not. And everyone's going to have their opinion. But because of that, I was like, all right, if something really interests me, like I really want to read a comic book, like the, Dark Knight Rises. Right? That's the third one?
The Christopher Nolan movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I didn't get that wrong, but Dark Knight Rises, that scene of Bane breaking his back reminded me of the time where I was like maybe 7 and I had came across a comic book from my uncle, and I remember seeing that page and I just kept looking at that page of watching Bane break Batman's back, and it was a different story altogether. But having watched that movie reminded me of that, and I went back and got the comic book and read through it all over again, and they were amazing. So it's how you play it, but that's also like, again, my interpretation of it. Going back to the Last of Us thing, I don't think people are going to draw that line between them because you're making a movie based off this game. It has to have so much from the game that at a certain point it's like, are we making a movie or are we just kind of stitching together all the animated scenes, the cut scenes of the game? And or I'm sorry, it's a TV show. I said movie, but that's my general point. So I don't see it working out at all. I don't
Yeah,
think.
I don't know. I think it's a really simple story. I can easily see it working. I think that just because of the kind of story that it is, it'd be different if it was more like something like Persona. It has a lot of there's a lot of lore to it. Like you have to understand a lot of like the mythology of the game. You have to understand kind of the rules a little bit more, and I think that would be harder to translate to a TV series because, you know, when you're playing a game, you get to kind of experience it. Whereas in the story, I mean, it's going to be a lot more dialogue heavy and stuff. But at the end of the day, the core of at least the first Last of Us game is just about a relationship between an adult man and a young woman. And I mean, obviously that sounds a lot worse than what it actually is based off of the way that I just pitched it. But it's, you know what I mean? It's like a father-daughter type story. So I think that like the core of it is easier to transfer to a different medium. But I think it just depends on what your expectations are. You know what I mean? Like if you're expecting that story to land the same way, it's definitely not going to. There's going to be a lot of adjustments made. They're going to have to add a lot of different character things. You spend the majority of The Last of Us just sneaking around trying not to get caught. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the show. It can't work like that. That would be a pretty boring show if it was just them jumping from, you know, like behind a generator to behind a little random stack of, I don't know, whatever random things you get caught behind in those games. But no, I think at the end of the day, it's tough. No video games have worked as films so far. So it's interesting to see them trying TV series like that. I will say, if you're going to take a story from a video game, this is probably one of the easiest games to pull from, right? Because like I said, It's got like a pretty standard story. Like, I mean, they've told stories like that in films 1,000 times before that video game ever even came out. Do you know what I mean? So now we just got to get the essence of the story right, with the characters having the same names and some of the same characteristics as they do within the game. And I think a lot of those properties are not as difficult to transfer over as some other video games would be. I will say, though, the nature of it being an HBO series concerns me, because what if the first season is really popular? Then you have to just start making shit up. And that's the thing I think that makes me the most nervous is, like, if you're going to stick to, like, okay, we're going to tell The Last of Us Part 1, so we're going to start the story with this character and his brother here, and, you know, they lose their daughter, and I guess spoilers for anybody who hasn't played the game. It's almost 10 years old now at this point, so I guess I don't feel too bad. But then it ends with, you know, him reconnecting with this young woman and kind of finding a new daughter and all that other kind of stuff. I think if you can pack that into 1 or 2 seasons, it could be a great show. But I think that if they're going to try to tell a version of that story while also trying to expand it so that we can milk it for as many seasons as it's necessary for, then that makes me nervous. Primarily because of Game of Thrones. Because once Game of Thrones surpassed where the books were at, that's where the quality of the show went down quite a bit. So it makes me a little bit nervous that, like, if they try to go past where the game is at, then there's a really strong chance that it's not going to connect the same way, unless they're more creative this time around. And I know it's not the exact same writers and creative people and stuff like that. I'm just saying, generally speaking, in this situation.
It's fair, but those concerns are fair, especially when you gotta ask yourself, if we're gonna make a TV series about this game that tells this story, the TV series you would expect is going to maybe expand on certain ideas or certain plot points that were in the game that maybe the game, for flow purposes, didn't take a whole lot of time into, you know?
Yeah.
And to that point, it's like, how much are you expanding until you start, like, literally adding stuff to the story that didn't necessarily happen in the game? And I think because of that reason, like I said, because there's that thing to compare it to, that thing to go back and say, well, how did they do this and how did they do that and how did it translate to the TV series? I agree. It's very interesting because the issue, and I've always said this with movies or game movies, it's like when you're trying to tell the story of this game that people can invest like 70 hours, sometimes depending on the game we're talking about, 100 hours to complete, and you're trying to tell that story in 2.5 hours, it's impossible. You're not gonna be able to do that in a way that's so accepting to everyone. Like, you're going to meet every spot that people are going to be looking out for. There's this giant checklist that a lot of people don't even know they realize they have until they see the show, they see the movie, and then realize, oh wait, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, this looked like shit, this didn't make sense, I didn't like how they did this character, so on and so forth. A TV series, you have a lot more time to really devote whole episodes to character development if you need to, and then start branching out on plot points and whatnot. So they definitely have that going for them. I just also know, like, maybe it's just our day and age when it comes to fans and like the who's right thing. A lot of times it's like people forget there's somebody who has a idea or a vision of how to do something, and they already have all these producers and everyone else in their ear on how to do it. But ideally, like, if you're going to go in that profession, you're doing it because you want to be able to express your ideas about something in a manner that if you believe is unique and people would appreciate it, that's what you're trying to do. It's an art. So it's really weird sometimes where it's like you have studio that made a game and a studio that makes movies, and people think like it's supposed to be apples to apples on how the story's told, how it's displayed, and how it's just performed. Like, it's totally different. So we'll see though. We'll see.
Not
you
holding
hear
out
about
hope,
the
though?
huh?
Not holding out hope though.
I mean, the closest thing, and I still even think it's like, we'll see. Like, Mortal Kombat is coming out soon. That is a movie that is like, it's pretty simple because you go to the game and yeah, there's lore, and yeah, there's a story about, well, Shao Kahn and Liu Kang and all that. But at the end of the day, it's just niggas fighting and ripping out spines and shit. So it's like, you can visually do that justice in this day and age and get people hyped for those fight scenes. It's just, hopefully they don't make it too cheesy, because that was my thing with like the earlier Mortal Kombat movies. They weren't bad. I'm not saying they were bad.
No, they were
I
horrible.
did like watching them.
They were very bad movies. They were
Well, I'm
very,
putting it
very
in
bad
context
movies.
of the little kid that watched it.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to correct
that was
a
the
little
next
bit,
point
though,
I was
because
gonna
Mortal
make.
Kombat 2 legitimately is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It was real cheesy too, though. Like,
Yeah.
I remember watching it, and I remember in my head, even though, I mean, it wasn't. It was like, I still got like Power Ranger vibes sometimes. I was just like, this is cool, I guess. But I always kept in my head, like, I guess it was like other examples I seen around that time too, or later on, where I was just like, oh, they could have done it this way, and at least it would have been kind of cool or something. But like I said, that one's a little bit easier because it's not a whole, or you can play around with that story, and most people aren't going to sit there and like question, well, actually, they should have had this character do it because he did this in a game. It's like, it's a fighting game. You have so much more leeway than a game that was kind of put out meant to be a story, meant to.
Yeah, I
try to
guess I
think of
get
a
what
better
you're
way.
saying. That's an interesting point. There's less of an expectation for where the story would go. Although, like I said, I would, just like I did with The Last of Us, I would argue I think that's probably what hurts. I have zero interest in the Mortal Kombat movie for that reason. I don't care
Fair.
about, there's no story. I don't care
Yeah.
to see. And I disagree with you. I think most fight scenes are really bad today. It's a lot of dependence on shaky cam. A lot of the stunt people aren't getting their work shown properly. They're trying to hide a lot of their shortcomings and stuff like that. So I'm a little concerned about the martial arts quality. I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope we get a lot of still shots. I hope we only get
Well-
cuts when cuts are adding to the fight and they're not trying to mask the fact that there's zero contact being made. But with that being
You're
said,
absolutely right.
if
I
if
just
one
want to
works,
clarify real quick.
Yeah.
I said we have the capabilities.
I
Not
agree
saying
with
they're
you.
going
John
to
Wick.
do it.
Yes, I agree. John Wick.
We
We've
got
seen
the
in John Wick that
capabilities
there are
where they're gonna do it.
capabilities.
And that, what story is in John Wick? A nigga's mad about getting his car stolen and his dog killed, and he comes
Yeah, well,
back for
exactly.
revenge.
Simple stories are always easier to tell. Absolutely.
mean-
and I think that's. But I will. The trailer, not to knock the Mortal Kombat. These motherfuckers have tattoos that they had born on their chest when they were young. It's already going to be really stupid. I'm not trying. Like, I wish I had more optimism when it came to it, but as soon as I saw that detail, I was like, oh, they're going to try really hard to make something out of this that's bigger than
Yeah.
it needs to be. To be completely honest, you just have a dude show up on people's doorsteps and go, "Hey, you're a badass. Come fight on this island or we're going to kill your family." And they're like, "What?" There you go. Then they're all on an island and they got to fight for survival, and it's a Mortal Kombat and
Yeah,
duel. Yeah, no, it's not the same game. I'm just doing that to piss people off.
it's kind of like a Kong and Godzilla thing where you know everything else about it is going to be absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it's
but
going to make
you're
zero sense, but just get them in there together and have them fight.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I guess that's the wager you got to make. It's like, am I going to sit here for an hour and a half just to maybe get like 45 minutes of what I really wanted to see? I don't know if that's really how the ratio was for the movie because I haven't seen it yet. But
Well, how many things from the Mortal Kombat movie do you really want to see? Like, I can't wait to see Scorpion say, "Get over here."
I already seen it in the trailer.
I know, me too, and it was disappointing.
I wish they dubbed the old voice.
Yeah.
That was the one. There's a part of me that's like, I wanted to hear the original, but I get why they didn't, and I'm not upset about it. But you know, all I really care to see is action. So
I agree. Cool fight scenes, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
One-on-one fight scenes. I don't want any fucking 7 people fighting at once, confusing bullshit. I want standard character over here, and then let's move towards each other. I want it to look just like it did, and it's not going to happen like that. So I'm not holding out any hope. But the good news is, if Mortal Kombat's really good, that gives me a lot more faith moving into something like The Last of Us because they're both HBO. Or not HBO, but they're both, I mean, on HBO Max. Probably not even close, to be completely honest, because I'm under the impression that it's a Warner Bros. Movie, just a straight Warner Brothers movie. I know they all work together, but you know what I mean.
yeah, they actually didn't they just recently say 2022 movies are going to be just theater releases?
I know Batman is just a theater release. I don't know if
Okay.
everything is going to be. My guess is they're probably going to stick with bigger budget movies that they expect a big return on to be theater exclusives. But then a lot of other movies, like this year is really interesting. I saw a chart. I don't know what the validity of the chart is, but it was tracking the streaming numbers with releases. And or like it was like a percentage of people who watched. And their 3 strongest performers so far on HBO Max have been Wonder Woman 1984, Judas and the Black Messiah, and Kong vs. Godzilla. What's really interesting, though, is Wonder Woman and Kong vs. Godzilla both did very well in theaters. Judas and the Black Messiah did very well on streaming, which means if I'm viewing it from just that perspective, my concern would be in the future, films like Judas and the Black Messiah are going to be exclusively or released on both, whereas movies like Kong vs. Godzilla would be exclusively in theaters. Do you know what I mean?
It kind of makes sense. I can see a world where theaters almost become exclusively blockbusters and
Yeah,
other ones go to
yeah.
streaming.
Which I don't want to see because then it's harder
No.
to make a movie like Judas and the Black Messiah, right? Because it
Yes.
doesn't have a giant budget or anything like that anyways, but it's kind of less of an incentive for some of those actors to work if you're not going to make money back on it. You know, I don't know if that makes sense entirely. And maybe not a film like that because it meant a lot to them, but films that don't necessarily touch on severe, like serious historical events that are just smaller films are probably going to get buried a little bit more in terms of quality.
Yeah, I can see that. I guess the question is going to come down to how the money's moving, right? Because, I mean, you've seen big budget films made through streaming now. I mean, the most recent example would be, The Irishman?
Yeah, that was Netflix. Also, I think just within the last week, Netflix paid like $450 million for the rights to Knives Out 2 and 3.
Yep. So, I mean, now that's clearly Netflix strategy going into movies and streaming, but I guess the question is if there's a way to somehow still maximize profits on the streaming end, that would be the only way that, like you said, it doesn't necessarily deter certain actors from like, oh, I could do this movie that's going to be on HBO, but I can also do this blockbuster that I'm also going to get paid a lot more money for. It's because like I said, I don't know a whole lot about how the money moves with that and how they get paid. Because like you said, like once it's streaming, like I don't think they get any type of payment for how many
that's the
streams.
concern. When 1984, I'm sorry, when Wonder Woman 1984 came out, that was one of the big issues. Was there was a clause in Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins' contract that if the film makes a certain amount of money in the box office, they get a bump, right? So now I can't get that bump if the movie doesn't come out. But that doesn't necessarily affect the entire cast. Do you get what I mean? So the idea would be, I believe they paid it out. So when the movie got released, they paid both Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot as if the film did make $1 billion, just to kind of avoid any issues. Because realistically, the first one did very well at the box office, so the expectation was this one was going to perform equally strong. So with that being said, it mainly affects the top. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be harder to get people like Robert Downey Jr., who get a portion of what he makes in the Avengers when it goes to like he gets a part of. And I don't like it's hard to say because obviously I'm not in there negotiating people's contracts, and only a certain amount of that information is made public. So it's not like you can say like definitively like he made X amount of money on this, because it's kind of hard sometimes to find like where the.
It's not like sports where we kind of know how the.
It's very transparent in sports. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's more like boxing where there's like a general estimate, like you have an idea of what they're supposed to be making, but at the same time there's a lot of information that's not really given off. But yeah, I think something like Judas and the Black Messiah would probably be made again, because I think that there's like an emotional connection to the film that the cast and the crew have, but not all films are treated like that. You know what I mean? Like, say you're doing like a small independent film about like a poor family living in like Iowa. You know what I mean? And somebody picks it up because they're like, I just need good work. You know, it's possible that some bigger actors and actresses wouldn't take a role like that because of stuff. Also, it's going to be harder to make it made with quality, because, you know, you're going to take a lot of cuts. Like, hey, we're filming this for a digital platform. We're not filming this to be seen in theaters. So you don't need all of the big equipment. You don't need to be, you know, recording the sound in a specific way. Like, this is going to be on people's televisions. So, you know what I mean? That's probably the bigger concern would be the quality of film. Like, have you ever seen, like, I don't mean to shit on like Netflix originals or anything like that, but have you ever seen like a Netflix original like teen rom-com movie or anything?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not that it's bad, because the actors are usually fine, right? It's bad movies. It is bad. I was trying to be nice. But it's not that it's bad everywhere, right? Like, they're trying their hardest. They're trying to put character into it. But a lot of its shortcomings are visually, or a lot of its shortcomings are in the filmmaking. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they're just like, hey, let's set this camera up, switch between these shots of these conversations. And you can get a lot of conversations, and you can show some other things, but you're probably not going to be able to do any like Stanley Kubrick type shit. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get limited. There's going to be less filmmakers like Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve. And then the people like that are probably going to exclusively work on big budget films, which is cool, but it's also nice when a big budget guy tones it down a little bit and makes his art film, because usually that's where they get to, I don't know. It sucks. The future is interesting, though. I can't knock it. I mean, I was very wrong about my theories about streaming and their effects on the theaters. I thought they made a really big mistake not selling King Kong versus Godzilla to Netflix. They got like a $250 million bid for it last year. Mm-hmm. And I said that was a stupid move when it happened, and I've been proven insanely wrong about that, because so far the movie's already surpassed that at the box office globally. So, you know, what the fuck do I know at the end of the day, I guess.
Well, hey, it was a prediction. That's all you could do, is predict how things are going to move. It would have been easier to just been like, it would have been easier to just not say anything. But that's the whole point of being able to make those predictions, to have a little fun inside of how it's going to work out. And for all the information you were getting, mainly on the Warner Bros. Side of their commitment to be releasing movies through HBO Max, that definitely would lead anybody to believe like, well, that's going to be the go-to, because everyone's gotten used to this. The only thing that made me think a little different was just because what is it, AMC? Yeah, I told you for as a joke when on that stock market stuff was going on, I bought one share of AMC, and then in one day of California reopening in theaters, it jumped up like 60%. So I was like,
He's
oh
not
shit,
a financial
people.
advisor, by the way.
Hell no, I'm not.
Just throwing
I'm
that out
not.
there. I think you have
I'm
to
not
say
a
that.
financial advisor. I bought that as a joke. Don't listen. Don't take any of my advice. But I can actually say that's where I kind of felt like there's going to be a bit more excitement for movie theaters, only because it seems like at this point it's a strong desire to just get out for people. So as much as logically streaming makes all the sense in the world, it also kind of still logically makes sense that we just still have that internal thing as human beings, as Americans, whatever, that we want to go out and we want to go to the movie theaters. We want to give popcorn.
Apparently,
we
it's not
wanna-
as Americans; it's as Chinese. You've seen the Chinese box office over
No,
the
I
last
haven't
year,
seen none
so
of
they've
that.
been fucking killing it. That's the
So,
thing. Interestingly
yeah.
enough, Kong versus Godzilla had a huge opening weekend over there, and then it got beat the next weekend by a Chinese film. And you go, okay, well, what kind of big budget movie do they got knocking off Kong versus Godzilla? It's not a big budget movie. It's like a small family drama. I guess those have been fucking crushing it at the box office over there. And when you look at their numbers, it's very strong. Like there was a movie that came out earlier this year that I believe crossed $800 million globally, and I don't even
Whoa.
know if it was released in the United States.
Damn.
And I can look up the film while we're speaking. But yeah, no, it's
I wonder where,
they're killing
because
it over there.
the two big markets would be what, China and India, right? Outside of the U.S.
The U.S. and China are on a different level than most other markets, if I'm being completely
Right,
honest.
but outside
And
of
we're talking
us, it
about
would be-
population and stuff. Yeah, India's got a big market. I mean, there's a lot of like Bollywood originals that do really well over there. But like China right now, because that was the thing with the U.S. when I don't know, I guess Jurassic World. When Jurassic World came out, it made $215 million domestically. That's impressive, right? Because that's
Yes.
already surpassing most films' budgets times like 10. Do you know what I mean? So you already made your budget back times 10 if you're like I don't know, like Get Out. I think Get Out's budget was like $30 million or $40 million or something like that. So if it's in its opening weekend, it made what Jurassic World made. They already made their money back, over, and they're good. Most other film markets don't really touch those kind of numbers, like within a weekend. You know what I mean? Like if you do really well in Russia, you did like 20 million. You know what I mean? Something like that. But over in China, they have films that are coming out that are doing like 150, 200 million dollars opening weekend as well. So they're on a completely different level when it comes to that game. China's probably surpassing the United States, to be completely honest, as the biggest film market in the world. And it's been on that road for a while. That's why a lot of films have been kind of doing more Chinese locations in their films, trying to incorporate more like trying to follow their guidelines a lot more, because it hurts the movie a lot if you don't get a chance to get released over there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I get because that was a conversation with Disney, right? They were making a lot of changes to movies that they put
Yep.
out there, like Star Wars. So I'm trying to remember didn't they like minimize or cut out a lot of the scenes with him and Rose, Finn and Rose.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily on the film itself how much of like the scenes they cut out, but they definitely minimized his role in the marketing. John Boyega. Like if you see the Chinese poster versus the American poster, his character is front and center on the American poster, but then on the Chinese poster he's like really tiny in the background somewhere.
Yeah, well, hey, it's just, I guess that's how that works. If that's how the market is, that's how the market is over there. But I get your point on how that could affect filming when obviously on a certain end, whether you're talking about the studio or whoever, obviously the number one thing is making money. And if you close yourself off to a market because a film included this or was promoted a certain way and the ideas don't clash, you're out of luck. The NBA had issues with that because wasn't that the issue with damn, you know what, I'm mad I brought that up because I forgot exactly what happened, but it was something to do with Twitter, I think, wasn't it? Like somebody made a tweet.
They got caught over there?
Oh, something happened
It was the guy
where
who owned the Rockets, or it was the
yeah,
GM, Daryl
yeah,
Morey or whatever his name is, and he was
yep.
tweeting about the Chinese politics, and it ended up causing quite an uproar.
Yeah, and the only issue was just that the NBA's been working for a while, trying to expand that market, and China was definitely a part of that. And I'm sure that probably puts a few wrenches in that plan wherever they're at on that.
$53.5 million made by the opening weekend of the underdog local drama Sister. It's a Shanghai-based studio. Looks like Lion Ray Pictures, Chinese film company.
53
Yeah, their
million
movie
opening
Sister.
weekend.
It's called Sister, and it's just like it's a drama. It's not like a big budget or any crazy thing, but it made $53.5 million opening weekend.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yep.
There was a movie that came out earlier this year. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it did very well. I would pull that up, but I don't want to stall the conversation too much up on that. So you're more than welcome to look into that information on your own if you'd like.
Absolutely. It'll be there.
But it's interesting, man. Entertainment's weird. Go ahead. My apologies. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no. You're fine. I was basically about to say the same thing about entertainment, and I mentioned tweets and I forgot. I didn't forgot. It reminded me of that tweet we were talking about a little bit ago, where it wasn't one tweet. It was just a topic on Twitter about who was better, the Beatles or Outkast. I got
Give a
pretty
little bit of
confused.
context on that. I did a little digging. Are you familiar with
Okay.
the comedian Ron Funches?
Yes.
Okay, it stemmed from him, and he tweeted
Okay.
that he believes that we're not going to make progress until people admit Outkast is better than the Beatles.
What kind of progress was he referring to?
I have zero
Just-
idea at all whatsoever. I don't know where he's coming from. Some of the tweets that I've seen, first of all, this isn't even a joke, man. Somebody tweeted, I don't even understand how people act like the Beatles are big. Can anybody name a single Beatles song? And I was like, how old are you, 15?
I was about to say, you can't be 15 because if
The
you're
Beatles
15,
have more number one hits than any artist in history by
In
quite a
history,
bit. It's
do
not
they?
like it's last time I checked, they were up by like 12 songs over everybody else.
you know,
And this is no knock on Outkast at all whatsoever. I just, it's a fun conversation. I don't want to try to take it too seriously. I will admit I have zero interest in debating two bands like that because I don't see enough, like, I don't understand how you would compare them. Like, they're both great in their own right, but I don't really see enough similarities to make them an argument that's worth, like, getting caught up in. It's a
even
matter
what
of
you
preference.
just said, you're talking about, you said compare two bands where in their respective areas of music, like the Beatles is considered a band and Outkast is a rap group. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know. It's funny.
Do you believe that Outkast are the Beatles of hip hop?
I don't know how. No, they're not. And to put in perspective, they're not, because if you're talking about the Beatles and you're talking about their significance in music and who they were, you got to go back and try to put yourself in the mind frame of someone during the time where they first came over from Britain, right?
Yeah.
Came over from
One of the
Britain.
European countries. Fucking white people.
No, I just always get my
England, Ireland, shit's all the same to me, let's be
Western
honest.
European country. Now, I don't get them mixed up. It's just I got to do a little bit more looking on the globe. Obviously, I can admit that. But anyway, they come over in the absolute madness that they caused, and it wasn't like madness like people were just doing crazy shit. They were just crazy about this band, about these four guys that at the time I think they all had the same haircut. They were like bowl cuts.
Yeah, they had like
you look at you can look at guys during that time that were like, oh, that's a good looking guy, Robert Plant or something, right? And then you look at the Beatles and like, fuck, everybody's going crazy about them, but that's what they were, and it wasn't. It's nothing you could compare to today. Nothing. Like the closest you could try to compare something to it is probably how fanatical people are about like I don't know, Taylor Swift or Beyonce, but comparatively
I'd argue like
speaking,
BTS,
they don't even
honestly.
touch it.
Somebody like
BTS,
BTS,
yeah,
just because
fair,
of the culture, like
fair.
the difference of coming over from
Yep.
a different country and having like that kind of a cultural impact, which is crazy too, because it's almost more impressive in regards to the language barrier that they face in K-pop versus, I mean, they speak English over in England, so it's pretty easy to take the
Oh, yeah,
music.
you know what I'm saying? Like that, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you made that mention because that's the closest thing you could compare it to. So if you have any understanding about them and about what they're doing right now, that was the Beatles then. And at least like now we also got social media. So even though I don't know who they are, I can look up a music video. This is just people tuning in to like TV shows and radio and hearing these guys and losing their ever loving minds. So compare that to Outkast. Outkast is the shit, but they're not doing that. They've never done that, and it's no disrespect to them. They did what Outkast did for rap and for hip hop lovers is something that you could maybe equate to how people felt about the Beatles, but it's still comparing apples and oranges. It's
I agree completely.
totally different. It's not something that you could. I don't know how you line it up because if you try to use statistics like sales, it's the Beatles.
Yeah, they should.
Number one hits, it's
Cultural
the Beatles.
significance, to be completely honest, is the Beatles. I don't know if you've gone back and seen some of their performances, but in other countries they were pulling equal crowds. It's not like they were only big in England and the United States. They went over to India or over to Germany or down in Africa somewhere. Like they were pulling giant numbers. And Outkast, I mean, I don't know, maybe Outkast has a bigger global reach than I think they do.
I don't question it, but I
don't
also
either. But I
don't.
also don't know. Now in the same
Well,
way, I'm sure with the Beatles. I'm less sure with Outkast.
But that's my point, right? We don't have statistics right in front of us to question, like, okay, what about this? What about that? But we don't have to question the Beatles. Anyone who knows the Beatles and actually know their music and actually know what they were when they were actually touring together, you don't question it. You already know. Like it's not even it's not something where like you said, if you wanted to question like I don't know Outkast and Foo Fighters, like I really don't know. Like Outkast might be blowing them out the water globally. So
Yeah.
it's same thing though. I also
I
know
don't know,
a lot
man.
of
I've
Foo
seen some
Fighter
of those
fans.
Foo Fighter crowds down in Brazil
You know what
or
I'm
something.
saying?
Down in Sao Paulo, they pull like 100,000 people.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's still the same thing where like musically you're comparing two different genres. So it's like how do you necessarily say who's better? But statistics you can actually go into nowadays if we did the research and be able to find out what's what. But I don't think that's a fair estimate as well because we just touched on like cultural significance. I think that there's that significance in the sense of who you touch, but there's also the significance in what the music means for a particular group of people. So there's that side of it too. All in all, I didn't get the straight arguments that some people were making. That was the stuff that I found both hilarious but also very sad because it just goes to show how again you don't have a lot of information but you have an opinion. It's a lot quicker to put that opinion out than to actually be like, well, let me see what's going on. I don't know these Beatles guys, but let me.
The most
What's
common tweet that I was seeing, and I don't know if it was a meme or not, but they were saying Outkast could have made Come Together. The Beatles could have never made Miss Jackson. I saw a lot of those arguments. Like Outkast could have done Hey Jude. The Beatles could have never done So Fresh, So Clean.
I mean,
And I don't understand.
that's
I don't
not,
either. I don't understand either.
That's like saying.
Before we get too deep into it, we're gonna get. Actually, fuck it. We're gonna dig in. Let's go heels deep. So, I don't understand the comparison between the Beatles and Outkast, but because it was a trending topic on Twitter within the last few days, and we decided to shoot with that topic in mind, I decided to compare a bunch of artists that I don't think belong in the same conversation with each other, and I was curious to see who you would actually prefer if you had to choose. If you only get one. And just for the sake of it, we're going to start with the Beatles versus Outkast. So, I know it's not a fun conversation. I know you don't understand why they're being compared with one another. But if you did have to choose, are you going Beatles or Outkast?
I'm going.
And then
Outkast.
a very quick why. Outkast?
Yes, and the quick why is because culturally they're more relevant to me. I love the Beatles and I love their music and I appreciate it, and there's nothing I take away from them. But if I'm needing to listen to music and it's like a Sunday morning, yes, I'm listening to Outkast. And even it could be a Friday morning, I'm listening to Outkast. That's just what I would listen to. That's my preference in music. So I did want to quickly say that last tweet when people were like, "Oh, Outkast could write this." That's just if
You
Outkast
don't
is
have to
writing Miss
justify it.
Jackson, why would they write "Hey Jude"?
I understand.
Like that's my question. It's
Why
like,
would Outkast write a song about John Lennon's son? I know.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
like
I understand. I know. Doesn't make any sense at all whatsoever. It's a hell of an argument though on their end. It's almost like too dumb to argue with.
but that's
But okay,
Yeah.
so if you're going between
No, but
Outkast
yeah.
and Beatles, you're listening to the Outkast. I think
Yeah.
that's a very tough one. I think that's probably the hardest one out of all of them that I put together because I love both of those bands so much. I think for the size of the body of work, I would rather give up the 4 Outkast albums versus the 9 or so Beatles albums.
that's very fair. I
And that's
agree
the
with
only
that.
way I know how to actually measure that because to be complete, I
Yeah.
fucking love Outkast and I love the Beatles. So, all right, my next one. This is the first one. Nobody's ever made this comparison besides us today, but we're gonna decide
Okay.
definitively who wins. So, are you gonna go with Lou Reed or Keith Sweat?
Lou Reed, because I never listened to Keith Sweat.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Lou Reed as well. That seems like a no-brainer to me. No disrespect
There's some
to
people
Keith
that are gonna
Sweat.
hate that answer,
but,
but I've never listened to
Nobody
Keith
wants
Sweat.
to listen to that over Lou Reed, apparently. Although, here's
I
the thing.
just-
There's a lot of people who, if they heard Lou Reed for the first time, they'd be like, who the fuck
You know,
listens to this shit? Which pisses me off. Here's a fun one. Everybody's been wondering, so I guess we'll settle it definitively now. Are you a bigger fan of the Isley Brothers or Nirvana?
Isley Brothers.
Going Isley Brothers? I think that's
Yeah.
same boat as you on that one. I love Nirvana, but they got no summer breeze.
Hey, and it's also the same, like, it's almost the same argument you were saying before with the Beatles and Outkast, where it's like body of
Body
work.
of work. Yeah, exactly.
It's
There's
like,
a lot more
I
Isley Brothers
love
music.
Nirvana, but at the same time, I can
2
go
albums.
from like 60s, 70s, 80s Isley Brothers. So
Isley Bros.
there's new stuff. They put out stuff, I want to say in the 90s and maybe early 2000s too. I might be wrong on that. But
Did you
I'm
watch
almost
that
positive.
Versus? Did they win against Earth, Wind, and Fire? No
See,
knock on
so-
Earth, Wind, and Fire. That didn't even seem like a competition to me at all whatsoever. And I love Earth, Wind, and Fire. But I was like, if we're comparing the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind, and Fire, I think I'm all day, every day on the Isley Brothers. And that's not even a knock on Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's just more of a. I think the Isley Brothers are severely underrated in the musical. Like historically, people don't mention them with bands like the Beatles as the greatest ever and Michael Jackson, and that's always been really weird to me.
It's like I said, it's who you're talking to, because like for me, I I hate it's kind of a cop out answer, but it's like whoever watched one, because it was just a super fun watch. It was great music. It was
whoever watched one.
Hey, it's a cop out answer, and the reason why
Honestly,
I say that
man,
also
the winner
'cause-
was the people.
no, well the verses.
Well, that game
it
fucking
was,
sucked. That's why people hate soccer. It's like, what was the score? 1-1, but let's be honest, the real winner was the people in attendance who got to watch an incredible game of football.
Well, in fairness, with versus where it generally was like an actual round for round thing, it's became more of just a celebration. Like there's still people who watch it and will have like a chart to say, all right, they won that round, and you could go on there and find people who will actually rate it. But
Probably change the name then from Versus, because that implies to me that there's a battle, and they should just call it Celebration. Hey, tonight on
Yeah.
Celebration,
it's yeah, like I said, there's definitely no like there's no one on there that's will say like, all right, and we gathered all the stuff and the people who won
I know they
is
don't
yada
declare,
yada.
yeah.
Yeah, it never does that, but it is always a fun time, because I think the one right before that was maybe not right before, but like two streams before was Raekwon and Ghostface Killer, and that shit was so hype. It
Oh
was
yeah, I'll take that
incredible.
one. Yeah.
Like it was insane. I could go on and on about the
Yeah,
details.
you're veering off. We're
but
still playing a game right now.
Yeah,
See,
I
you don't
know.
care about games. That's what I'm realizing.
Hey, I care
You're like,
about
there's no
music.
winners. There's
And
no winners.
this one's
here.
about music, so everything I'm just like,
Fair
oh,
enough.
there was this part and there was that part.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All right. On the note of artists who don't need to be compared, but for the fuck of it, we're gonna choose between Shaka Khan or No Doubt.
um,
That one stump you?
it's just so weird.
That's how I felt when I saw the Beatles versus Outkast. I was like, what? I mean, they're both great bands, but
shit. I mean, also because with both, like I never really listened to a lot of their music. Like,
okay.
I've heard a lot of Shaka Khan sampled, and I've heard a lot of her own music as well. But I've definitely heard her a lot sampled. But it's also a little bit the same thing with No Doubt. It's like I have a trouble picking one just because it's like I could go either way and I'd be fine. I think.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Shaka Khan then.
I'm gonna go Shaka
No disrespect to No Doubt, but I'm every woman versus I'm just a girl. I prefer women to
Yeah.
girls. Let's be honest. Black Sabbath or Eminem?
Black Sabbath.
Which Sabbath are you going with? Does that matter to you, or are you just overall body of work?
Overall body of work, because I loved Ozzy as a frontman. I love Dio as a frontman. So Heaven and Hell's the shit. But then Black Sabbath, I have, that was the first vinyl that I bought. So yeah. Yeah, definitely Black Sabbath, and that's just because I like Eminem, but I feel like with Eminem, I'm very picky on like what.
Yeah,
Eminem I'm
if
listening
his
to
career would have ended
sometimes.
after like 2 or 3 albums, I think that's a little
You know
bit of
what
a
I
harder
mean?
conversation. But I think the
Love
last
the
15
guy,
years of
and I'm
material.
glad he's doing his thing.
As soon as he started doing that, I walk around with a backpack and a crap and a cap stuff.
That's an
That's what I
awfully
was
hot
at.
coffee pot.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
bro.
I know. I used to like
I
it
mean,
when he would go.
hey, I like it because it shows like he's still
He cares a
doing
lot
it, you
about
know?
the
He
nuance
cares.
of rapping. He cares
You know
very
what I'm
much about
saying?
the nuance of rapping, and I respect that. But he's almost too technical.
Yes, I think
It's-
that's what it is. I think that's
Yeah.
like the perfect way to describe it.
It's like, okay,
Too
I appreciate that you're technical, but you're getting a little too technical for me.
Yeah. It's
All right,
like
here we go.
seeing,
This one's my
that's
favorite.
not-
Leonard Cohen or Ja Rule? To me,
Tell
this
the
is the
Leonard
only
Cohen song.
Hallelujah.
No, do I know that song? It wasn't that. Is that like George
Very fun.
Harrison?
They've done it. No. That's My Sweet Lord.
Oh,
George Harrison.
okay, I know you. Yeah, you got that.
He does say Hallelujah in that song. Hallelujah.
No,
my
yeah, no, that
sweet
is my
Lord.
sweet Lord though. And that's the I don't know why the hell I said George Harrison because I have Hallelujah playing in my head. Same thing. Never really listen. I don't really fuck with Ja Rule.
That's what I'm
And-
saying. To me,
Yeah.
it's Leonard Cohen. First of all, Leonard Cohen's a beautiful songwriter. A lot of people can't do the voice, but Ja Rule is trash. So
Yeah, there was
where
a
I'm at on
time I
that
was
one.
like, yeah, man, no.
yeah, I'm alright.
Every time I go back, I'm like, I used to fucking sing the shit out the song, and then the next one I
Did you?
realized,
Yeah, I know,
oh, I'm
me too.
singing a rap song right now.
Yeah, when I was a
Alright.
kid, I didn't know any better. All right, that one we're gonna keep that up in the air for you. You're not familiar enough with Leonard Cohen to have a definitive opinion, but you're also smart enough to never associate yourself with Ja Rule.
Well, I know
So-
Hallelujah. That's a good song.
That's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
Tyler the Creator or Bill Withers?
Fuck. Ooh. Now, hey, you did this
Some of
shit
these
on
I designed
purpose.
specifically for you.
Yeah, you did this shit on purpose, bro.
Some of these aren't like nobody's ever comparing these two guys, but I know that you care about it, so I wanted to make your heart struggle.
Oh man.
Nothing? Oh,
No,
can't feel. No Dead Space. No Dead Space. What are the pros and
Withers.
cons to Tyler and Bill Withers?
The pros and cons, I love them both, and there's no cons. I guess the one con is like with Tyler is like I like this earlier stuff, but is it necessarily like I would go back and want to listen to uh
Goblin.
Goblin? Like I can and I have, but it's not something I do frequently. I've very much enjoyed watching all the change and the progress he's made for himself through music in the sense of like there you heard the change going through the music. And I remember I was one of the people will automatically dismiss Tyler Creator because he would have something in his music that they would
Got the
associate
shock
with
rap
being
thing.
like
Yeah.
satanic or this and that. And my thing was I got their points, but I'm like, if you really listen, you can see like the talent. Like
Oh, yeah,
seriously, like this guy could rap. And then now he's on a song with Freddie Gibbs. What was it called? Something to rap about. And some people was just talking about that verse about how dope it was, and from the sound of it, sounded like it was just something he did in one take. He just
Little
got on there and
sidetrack.
started rapping some stuff.
You
But
see that clip on Joe Rogan where Freddie Gibbs talked about shooting a crackhead?
yeah, I watched it, and it was hilarious as fuck. Of Freddie Gibbs,
How casually he said it.
100%.
Oh yeah, there's a difference because I shot a crackhead like 9 times with one of those, and he got up and just kept running at me. And I was like,
Yeah.
everybody in the room.
Oh,
was like, hey,
Joe
cool,
was
let's
not
move
ready.
forward.
He was not prepared for Freddie Gibbs. That was the
No,
main
no.
thing. It was like
That was a great
because when he was like, yeah, he's got great music. I listen to his essentials on Spotify. And I'm like, I don't think you're ready for this interview, bro, because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure those essentials played like Crime Pays, which I love Crime Pays, but they also didn't pay some other shit that you would have been like, oh, he's a rapper. He's not. He's not wearing skinny jeans. No, yeah,
No,
he's
no,
not doing
this
that.
isn't Demi
So
Lovato. But, okay, so you got, and that it sounds like you're leaning towards Bill Withers then, because you kind of gave
Yes,
yourself an
yes.
out on the Tyler the Creator.
I'm gonna say Bill Withers because the time I found out so many songs and music that I liked was Bill Withers that I associated with other people, and for some reason just never got corrected. That was the day I actually sat down and went through a lot of his catalog, and it was just like I pick whatever album I could just listen to it, and I'm gonna have a good time. And I can't say that for Tyler Creator all the time. Like sometimes I can listen to Goblin, sometimes I'm like, nah, bro, I'm good. I'm good right now. I'm more.
Yeah.
I like more of the Flower Boy stuff, or I like more of the Igor. But it's just hard to say that because I guess the question's not can I ever not listen to them again. I guess in my head I was thinking if I got to listen to one and not the other,
Taking it too
what would it
seriously,
be?
you start stressing out. You're like, I like both of them though.
Shit. But in terms of it all, like Bill Withers, hands down. But I'm still a huge Tyler Creator fan.
Yeah, I agree. I like Tyler's music quite a bit. I'm a fan, but I think Bill Withers is in my top 5, so there's zero chance in hell I'm picking against him unless it's like Prince or David Bowie or somebody.
It's
like
also
that.
a
Those
weird
are the
one,
only
too,
people
be-
that I rank above him.
Yeah, it's also weird because with all three of those guys you just mentioned, and when you're comparing somebody to them, they have a body of work that's done. So you got everything. Who knows? Like, just we don't know. We can speculate, right? But we don't know. Tyler Creator might come
No
out.
disrespect to Tyler, he's not writing some of the songs Bill Withers wrote. So timeless.
Not
It's
right
on a
now.
different level. Never. I'm 100. I'm willing to bet you any money he never does a song that touches "Lean on Me" in regards to cultural significance.
Hey, and I'm not saying
It'd be-
he's going to necessarily. I'm just saying, like, you have a completed body of work on one end, and on the other end, you have something that's ongoing.
That's true.
And
Absolutely.
So it's more of an interesting point, but no, I'm not trying to suggest he's gonna be writing some
Surpassing
shit
it.
that.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right,
I
here
don't
we
know
go.
if he's
Last
gonna be
3.
inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That doesn't mean anything.
No.
They didn't put Rush in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame until people cried about it for 20 years.
Fair.
So, I mean, if they're not going to put Rush in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, who the fuck gets in? All right, last 3. This is probably the biggest in regards to name. Pink Floyd or Jay-Z?
Jay-Z.
Yeah, this is an
I
easy
grew
one.
up on
Pink Floyd for
Jay-Z.
me.
Huh?
This is an easy one for Pink Floyd for me.
Fair. I mean, I love Pink Floyd, but Jay-Z, like I say, he's got a part of my childhood. Like I told you this before Kendrick Lamar, he was my number one rapper of all time. There was nobody ever touching him. And then listening to Good Kid, Mad City, it just brought this whole other feeling and train of thought that while listening to Jay-Z, I always could envision like the stories she was telling and draw similarities to some of the things that I seen growing up. It was like Good Kid, Mad City was almost more of a direct, like, I know what that is. I know what he's talking about in these situations.
So your answer is Kendrick Lamar?
No, my answer is to say, where Kendrick's my number one rapper and arguably probably, I'm not going to go artist route right now. I'm not going to get into that headspace. But anyway, number one rapper, Jay-Z held that spot for so long, and he was like that number one go-to. If I got to get in the mood on something, it's Jay-Z. So, unfortunately, Pink Floyd came a little bit later in my life, but I definitely still love him.
Yeah, no, that's an easy one for me. It's no knock on Jay-Z. Jay-Z's one of the most influential rappers of all time. A lot of people aren't big Jay-Z fans, I've learned, as I've gotten older. That's been very surprising to me to find out that he's also hated on as much as he is. I've never really understood that entirely.
You listen to his music, you'd be like, oh, I know where that hate's coming from.
Some of it I
like,
understand.
yeah.
I was going to say, I mean, most of his releases after like 2005, I understand where hate's coming from. I'm not trying to shit on it or anything like that, but the quality of music is a little more up and down. And I think, yeah, Pink Floyd's just quintessential music to me. I think some of their topics are very timeless. You know what I mean? They're for anybody, anywhere. I think that's one of the things that probably makes Jay-Z harder for some people is some people don't like drug dealing music. You know what I mean? I don't understand. It's interesting to me. Jay-Z has built a career much bigger than I think anybody thought he would ever have. I think his place in history is bigger than Pink Floyd's because of what he was able to accomplish. But if we're just talking music, it's not even a question to me. It's Pink Floyd. Here's the only one that I guess kind of actually makes a little bit of sense. I just realized this. We're going to do the Battle for Canada. This is one of our last two here real quick.
The Battle for Canada.
We got Neil Young and Drake.
All right.
Remember, this is a game that we started because there was a trending Twitter conversation about who is the superior artist, the Beatles or Outkast, and neither of us thought that to make any sense. So here we are now arguing who's better, Neil Young or Drake.
I'm going to have to go with Neil Young. I guess it's, like I said, it just depends on what you're trying to debate. Because you're trying to talk success. I mean, of course it's Drake, but music-wise, I'd rather listen to Neil Young. So,
yeah, Drake's the most overrated artist of all time. It's Neil Young all day. Drake's trash. No disrespect to Drake. Mac DeMarco or Jimi Hendrix? I can't stand Drake's music. I think Drake is one of the most overrated artists of all time. I'm happy for the guy that he's found the success that he has. His music does not scratch my itch at all whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it spreads that shit. So,
gosh damn.
Yeah, I'm not at all a fan. Mac DeMarco or Jimi Hendrix? That's how we're going to end it off here. That's the last one that we're going to go with. And conversations. Yeah, that's... I figured I like the things Mac DeMarco does with his guitar, so let's compare it to the guy who does the coolest things ever with his guitar. But yeah, I agree. Jimi Hendrix, that's a pretty easy one right there. Did any of those conversations make sense? No.
No.
Were any of those comparisons at all a little bit valid? Not at all. But that's what Twitter did, so that's what we do.
I guess.
To that, while we're celebrating music, I guess we'll end here with a conversation that's a little less exciting to have. That's a little disappointing to have, to be completely honest. Obviously, we got to touch on the fact that over the course of the last week, we're shooting this on Saturday. We'll have it released on Monday, so it'll be a few days ago as of when we drop it. But DMX passed away, so I guess while we got a little bit of time to end here, I was going to ask you first, Maurice, do you have any stories you want to share on anything like that, or any comments that you want to make on the topic?
No, it's very unfortunate. It's very sad to hear of his passing, and when something like this happens, especially in regards to somebody who, for some people, depending on who you are, you listen to his music, you learned about his life, his struggles, his triumphs, and kind of similar to what I was talking about with how I feel about Kendrick and his music and the things I know about him. You get to a certain point with some of these artists where they're not just like an artist that you like. There's somebody that holds a spot of importance to you because of what their music meant to you, or because what you understood about their music that made you better understand them. It made you maybe better relate to them. And I think with a lot of the stuff you've seen recently, it was a lot of like, people sharing those stories and sharing how much he influenced their lives. And I just got to say, like, it's something where I definitely urge people to just take that time and really relish in those good moments, those good feelings, those times where you were, whatever date or whatever period of time you can go back to and remember a DMX song and how that reminds you of a good feeling you had, or like I said, a good positive moment in your life. Really hone in on those, because that's what he would want. And my best belief of things, because anytime you really got the chance to hear him talk, that man was a man that really loved people. And I wish I could remember the exact quote and who said it, but basically I remember someone saying something along the lines like he was somebody who embraced the world that caused him so much struggle, so much pain, with love, almost out of the fact that that's what he was looking for in return too. So it's very sad. It's very disheartening, because it seems like we were talking about this other day. It almost seems like all these childhood heroes that we've had, all these people that we looked up to or aspired to be like, or just enjoyed their humanity, enjoyed the fact that they were a part of this world and we got to know something about them. It's like they're leaving us. But at the end of the day, they never really leave, because as long as it's something that's remembered, as long as it's something that's celebrated, it's a continuance of exactly what, for the most part, they all set out to do, which is to bring joy to the people that listen to the music or watch their movies or whatever in terms of artists. But specifically the DMX, I don't want to get into all the bad stuff, but like I said, you've heard the stories, you heard the things that the man went through, but every time he actually just was having a conversation with someone, he was always somebody that I wish I got to meet that guy one day, because I feel like it was like he had this energy around him. You notice that when it came to the people he was around, it was like everybody was so calm. And here's this guy who's on the radio, on his albums, you think he'd be like one of the most violent, fierce motherfuckers. Like you never want to be around him, because you think he's about to, like, what's the Cat Williams joke about him being at the restaurant and you can't go out with him because he was like barking at the waiter and shit. Like, it's funny, but it's like sometimes you kind of thought like, oh, that's probably how he was. But when you seen him in interviews and hear him talk to people, you realize like, nah, this is just a man who's going through a lot of shit, who's been through a lot of shit, is continuing to do a lot of shit. But in a lot of the later years, you just started to see him open up and explain a lot of this and explain how these things affected him and how he just wanted better and different for others. And it was a wonderful thing. So, yeah, absolutely, rest in peace. And like I said, for everyone else that is hurt by this and is pained by this passing, like I said, take this time to just really relish in what he was able to do for people, putting out that music. Go watch Belly, like just try to focus on that because it's real easy to kind of get downtrodden and just be sad. And for his close friends and families, I'm dare not try to say, oh, we'll just get over it by listening to this music. But on the fan side of things, I think that's a really good way to show your respect. And it's also therapeutic in that sense too.
Yeah, I think you made a point earlier that I thought was really interesting. He kind of embraced the world that didn't necessarily embrace him all the way. But, I just hope that when people look back on the life of DMX, like you said, they focus on the fact that he was one of few artists in history to have 4 straight albums go straight to number 1. You know what I mean? Like, I hope they focus on the fact that when everything was said and done, people focused on how much the music meant to him and less on the things that he struggled with throughout his life. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes when people are here, so much of their narrative gets caught up in the negativity. Like DMX is a perfect example of that. My entire life, when he gets brought up, all you ever hear is shit about being a crackhead or, having issues with something or, hopefully he gets his shit together. And it sucks because, the guy did pour his heart out and you could see that he was passionate about what he did. I don't know if you've ever seen his Woodstock 99 performances.
Yeah.
But it's a giant crowd. The fucking energy is all the way there. And it's so cool to hear. Because, as enough time passes by with a lot of these artists, they kind of get, they get strongly associated with just the hits, like the Rough Rider anthems and the party ups and stuff like that. But there were some songs that I'm less familiar with. And there's 20, 30,000 people in the crowd screaming the lyrics back at him. You know what I mean? And, that kind of shit's so cool to me. And I don't know. DMX is a hard one because he was very much a part of my childhood. I listened to a lot of his music growing up. I've always been a huge DMX fan. So I think this is one of those few ones that, I don't know, it feels like an artist from my lifetime is gone now. You know what I mean? Because, other times you'll see artists go and they're a lot older than me. So even though I'm a big fan of them, it feels like it's something that, my mom would be a little bit more sad about or something. And DMX is one of those that falls into our lifetime. And I don't know, man. I'm happy to see the positive outpouring that people have given DMX. I'm happy to see that the story is going to be remembered as somebody who poured their heart out to the world and tried to make it a more fun and exciting place versus somebody who had issues. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I just feel like when people are here, you don't let them forget those kind of things. But then it seems like people are all ready to forget those things now all of a sudden. And I don't know. It just kind of makes me sad that it plays out like that. But people never get their flowers while they're here, unfortunately. They save those for afterwards. So, RIPX. He done gave it to us, man, and we're happy for it, and I'm grateful for it. And it's about all I got to say about that situation. I don't know how to really cover those subjects. It's weird. I don't know the people personally, so I feel a little bit uncomfortable getting into it too much, but at the same time, I always liked his music, so I thought it was something worth bringing up.
Absolutely. Like you said, we can't speak for any of those close personal relationships he had, but we all in ourselves had a relationship with him, even if it wasn't direct. It was through his music, and that just goes with any form of art. Whether it's a director you like with movies, game developer, music artist. I think music is a lot more personal in those regards, but
than any other art form.
You know what I'm saying? It just moves people a lot different. It has such a dramatic and profound effect on things like thought process and emotions that's how you do form those connections with people. Like I said, I've never met Kendrick Lamar in my life, but at the same time, there's times where I feel like listening to his music, like, oh, he's just another homie. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's just, I know this guy, and I know I don't know him, and ain't no weird, crazy, like, oh yeah, that guy's my best friend. Ain't nothing like that, but it's just, that's how much his music has made an effect on me, that it's a lot more deeper than he's just like my favorite rapper. I got a lot of rappers that are my favorite rappers, but he's the favorite rapper for me right now. And to that point with DMX, and like we were saying, growing up, I remember one of the first songs I learned to play in band was X Gonna Give It To You. And it was so cool to me because before, I mean, listening to Jay-Z's music, I always loved the instrumentation that he used in his music. But I never really looked at other songs like that. Like, oh, listen to this trumpet, listen to this bass, listen to this bass drum, this whatever effect. That was when I started paying a lot more attention, because when I was like, oh, I can actually play that myself, it was totally different. Not everything. I want to listen to everything and try to figure out how to play this, how to play that. And it started first with him. So it's, like I said, it's very sad. But to your point, I am glad that, unlike other times where unfortunately the narrative is just focusing on the negatives and the not so great points of someone's life only because of their stardom and of their admiration, it's widely known. For the most part, it's not always, but for the most part, people have been avoiding that.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's made me happy to see. I'm happy people are focusing on the stuff that actually matters here in the end.
Yep.
So with that being said, it's a weird way to end the conversation, but we got to do it. So if you like Sacred Time, make sure you like and follow the page, comment, subscribe, all that other kind of shit. Just make us active in your algorithm so that more people see us.
Yeah.
We're going to keep begging every episode until it gets done, so you're probably
Every
better off
single
just
one.
doing it now, because it's going to get annoying after a while. Thank you for
Tell your
watching
mama,
Sacred Time.
your
I'm
mama's
Dennis
mama.
Kaminsky. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can follow Sacred Time on Instagram and Twitter at Sacred Time Pod. Also follow, I don't know all the terms, to be completely honest. I don't even use social media, so if you guys don't do any of it, I don't fucking care. You know what I mean? What's your social
we
media
care.
that they can't follow?
We need you guys, so don't take that personal.
I don't care. You guys can live your own lives. Go ahead.
Well, you can follow me at Instagram. Big Blurred at Instagram. So
Instagram
should
at Big
be,
Blurred.
I don't think there's too many other ones. I think I'm the one and only right now.
One and only
So we're gonna try to keep
BIGBLERD.
Yeah, I want to spell it like that. It just doesn't roll off the tongue so easy. But
Hell yeah, BIGBLERD. Just like that.
I guess.
That rolled off my tongue perfect 3 times in the conversation already. Thank you for watching Sacred Time.
All right.